Welcome to Granny's Justice, a place where secrets are spoken and silence finally ends.
The daughter I raised with love left me on the road like a stranger. It was cold. Streetlights glowed. Cars rushed past, strangers staring, while my own daughter, my flesh, my blood, walked away and left me standing there with nothing. No money, no bag, no home, just me and the silence of her betrayal
echoing in the night. But before I tell you everything, I want to know, where are you listening from? Type your city and country in the comments, because betrayal like this doesn't belong to one place. It can happen anywhere. My name is Margaret Thompson. I'm 79 years old, from Huntsville, Alabama. Here, people know me as the old woman with roses in her garden, pecan pies on Sunday mornings, and a smile that hides more pain than they'll ever see. For decades, I wore the name Mother like a crown, and my only daughter was the reason I woke up each day. She was my pride, my joy, my blessing. Or so I thought. Asterisk, I was born and raised in Huntsville, Alabama, a town wrapped in the scent of pine after every rainfall, where cicadas sang like endless choirs in the summer heat, and where neighbors waved from their porches whether they knew your name or not. Life had a rhythm there. Children raced their bicycles down gravel roads, laughter cutting bright lines through humid air. Old men argued football outside the barber shop, while the barber kept sweeping the same patch of dust again and again like time itself refused to move. Women traded pies, gossip, and blessings over picket fences, their laughter spilling into the dusk like golden light. And Sundays were sacred. Church bells rang louder than alarm clocks, rolling over shingles and telephone poles, a sound so deep it shook the leaves. Families in starched clothes walked in time with the bells, Bibles held close, shoes clicking in perfect rhythm. On Sundays, even the stray dogs rested. It was the hour the whole town remembered. It belonged to something larger than itself. Dada grew up in a modest white house on Maple Street. The paint chipped in places. The roof wore its storms like old metals. The screen door groaned every time it swung shut, and the floorboard sang beneath tired feet. It wasn't grand. It wasn't new, but it was mine. And more than that, it was the place where I would know my greatest joy and my deepest sorrow, because it was the house where I raised the only person who mattered more than life itself, my daughter. The day she was born, the world itself seemed to pause. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and iron, but when they placed her in my arms, the noises blurred to silence. She was so small, a bundle wrapped in pink, fists clenched like secrets not yet told. Her eyes fluttered open, and I swear the whole world tilted toward her. Her fingers gripped mine with a strength that startled me, like ivy finding stone and refusing to let go. And right then, I made a vow, not with my lips, but with every trembling piece of my soul. I'll protect you. I'll fight for you. I'll give you everything I never had, with God as my witness. I meant every word. When I carried her home, neighbors gathered along the fence. Mrs. Carter Flowers, still on her apron, leaned in and whispered, "Margaret, God has given you an angel." And I believed her, because even her cries sounded like music to me. Nights, I rocked her under the glow of a single lamp, her breath warm against my collarbone, our heartbeats soft and braided together. The world could have been burning, and I wouldn't have looked up. It was me and her, 2 heartbeats, 1 promise. She grew quickly, too quickly. Some mornings I swore the night had stretched her. Curious eyes mapped every corner of our rooms. Tiny fingers tugged at the edges of everything. As if the world was a ribbon she could pull closer, her laughter filled the house like bells. Pain in my back from scrubbing floors. gone when that sound arrived. At 1 year, she wobbled across the rug, arms outstretched, legs quivering like a fawn's. I clapped so hard I spooked the cat straight out the back door, and I laughed until tears washed my cheeks. Because in her steps, I found my own reason to keep walking. It happened one golden afternoon, sunlight pouring across the kitchen tiles like warm milk. She glanced up from a wooden spoon, smiled, and said it. Mama, I froze. The tears came fast, not for the word itself, but because of what it carried: belonging, trust, love made sound. At church, she clung to my dress, little shoes tapping. But when the hymns rose, so did her voice, thin, steady, brave like a bird discovering its first sky. The pastor's smile said it without words. That child is lit from within. At school, teachers pulled me aside. Margaret, that girl of yours is sharp, ambitious, she'll go far. Neighbors echoed it. Polite, bright, you raised her right. Every praise I tucked like a jewel into my heart. Because when they admired her, they were telling me I had done something right in this world. At night, she'd sit at the kitchen table, legs swinging, the smell of supper still warm in the air. Her eyes sparkled with dreams too big for her small frame. Mama, she'd whisper, one day I'll buy you a house with a garden as wide as the churchyard. You'll never work again? I laughed through tears. You don't have to promise me that, baby. Just be happy. But she shook her head, stubborn, certain. No, I'll do it. You'll see. And I believed her. How could I not? Her voice carried fire. Her eyes carried certainty. And I carried those words like scripture etched into bone. But love can blind you. Even then, there were sharp edges. Flashes in her eyes that unsettled me. Quick storms that rolled through and vanished before I could name them. A slammed door. A rolled eye. A silence that lingered just a breath too long. She's growing, I told myself. She'd change. Love will guide her back. Because it had to. Because I couldn't imagine her as anything less than my blessing. Huntsville kept its rhythm, bikes and barber chairs, pies and porch swings, bells and summer thunder. And in our little white house, we kept ours. We memorized each other's footsteps on those singing boards. We learned the weight of silence between us, and we learned to pretend it didn't mean anything. If only I'd known then what I know now, that the smallest silences can be the loudest warnings, and the softest promises can hold the sharpest edges. Before I go on, tell me where you're listening from. Type your city and country, because what I'm about to say doesn't belong to one town or one mother alone. It can happen anywhere. Those early years were the perfect beginning. Laughter, admiration, promises braided tight between a mother and her child. We wore that braid like armor. We believed it could hold anything, but armor can crack. And once it does, everything sharp finds its way in. I didn't know then that every smile, every hymn, every dream she painted for me was only an illusion. A beautiful veil, a silk curtain hiding a storm dot, and when it finally tore, the shards would cut deeper than I ever thought possible, because the daughter I raised with a vow in my bones was about to look at me with eyes I didn't recognize and say the first words that would open the crack. If you're here with me, thank you. Stay. The next few minutes are the ones I've never said out loud. Until now. From the moment she could walk, my daughter carried herself with a confidence I never had. Her little feet pattered across those singing floorboards. Her laughter climbing the walls until even the ceiling seemed to hold it. And I would watch her, hands still wet from dishwater, back aching from work, and think, this child is my second chance at life. By the time she reached school, her light wasn't just mine to see. Teachers pulled me aside, voices hushed but certain. Margaret, that girl of yours is sharp, ambitious. She do great things. At church, the pastor tilted his head when she sang hymns. his smile holding a kind of knowing pride, as if he believed her small voice carried heaven's echo. Neighbors waved when we walked home, calling out, "There she goes, so polite, so clever. Margaret, you must be proud," and oh, how I was. Each word of praise felt like a metal pinned to my chest, because when they admired her, they weren't just praising her. They were telling me that somehow, through all my scrubbing and serving and sacrifice, I had done something right in this world. I worked 2 jobs, cleaning houses by day, waiting tables by night. Every dollar I earned went to her. While other children wore hand-me-downs, I scraped enough to buy her something new at the start of each school year. When other mothers rested on Sundays, I rose before dawn to bake pies for fundraisers, so she could go on school trips and never feel less than anyone else. I went without, so she never had to. And I carried that weight proudly because it was for her. On quiet nights, the kitchen smelled of cornbread, the porch swing creaked in the breeze, and she'd curl against me with eyes glowing brighter than the fireflies outside. "Mama," she whispered once, "one day I'll buy you a house bigger than this, with a garden wide as the churchyard, and you'll never have to work again." Those words didn't just touch me. They melted into me, seared themselves into my bones like scripture. I carried them everywhere. Every bruise on my hands, every ache in my back, I bore it gladly, because I believed her promise was waiting on the other side. In Huntsville, families are measured by their children. And for a long time, mine was the picture others held up as proof of what love could look like. We walked together, grocery bags in hand, hymnals in the other, and people whispered, "There go Margaret and her girl." A blessing, those two, and I let those whispers wrap around me like a shawl. Because when the world envied us, I felt like my sacrifices had finally meant something. Yet, love has a way of blinding you. Even in those golden years, there were moments, fleeting, sharp, that should have told me something wasn't right. Her eyes, sometimes sharper than they should have been. Her tone, with edges that cut deeper than any child should. A slammed door echoing longer than it should have. A silence that stretched just a little too wide. I told myself, she's growing. She's changing. Love will guide her back, because it had to. Because I could not imagine her as anything less than my blessing. I stopped being Margaret. I was just Mama, her provider, her protector, her shadow. When people asked about my life, I didn't talk about my hunger, my tired bones, my quiet dreams. I talked about her. Her grades, her smile, her singing voice. She was my proof that I mattered. My pride, my joy, the jewel I held up to the world. But pride can be the cruelest illusion of all. Because when you give your whole self to someone, you don't see the cracks forming. You don't notice the shadows behind their smile. You believe the dream, even as the truth claws at the edges. And I believed. Oh, I believed with everything in me, but belief cannot stop betrayal. And the daughter I wore like a crown was about to become the storm that stripped me bare. Betrayal never arrives with thunder. It creeps in like water through cracks in a wall, quiet, patient, relentless, until one day the house you built with love begins to fall in on itself. For me, the cracks began in whispers, and glances too sharp, and silences that stretched too long. My daughter's eyes once lit like lanterns when she saw me. She used to burst through the door, drop her school bag with a thud, and hug me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. But then the light began to fade. Her hugs grew shorter, her words fewer, her eyes sharper. "How was your day, baby?" I'd ask, clinging to routine like a lifeline. Fine, just that one word, flat, empty, like she was speaking to a stranger. And every fine cut deeper than a scream. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. If I asked for help with dishes, she'd sigh so heavy it rattled the glasses in the cupboard. "Why can't you do it yourself?" She snapped once. I laughed nervously, masking the sting. Oh, she's just tired, I whispered to myself. She is growing. Kids change, but deep down, her words lodged in me like splinters, small, invisible, but painful every time I moved out soon. She began slipping away in other ways. Late nights. Excuses that didn't add up. Where were you? I'd ask gently with friends. That was all. No names, no warmth. Just a wall between us. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe the little girl I rocked in my arms was still in there. So I nodded. I smiled. I told myself I was overthinking, but mothers know. Even when we don't want a dot at first, it was small. A few dollars gone from my purse. Change missing from the jar above the fridge. I told myself I was forgetful. Margaret, you're getting older, I muttered. Don't be foolish. But then, the necklace my mother gave me disappeared. A brooch I'd worn to church once, gone. I searched the drawers. I turned over cushions. I whispered prayers, hoping I'd simply misplaced them. But deep down, my bones knew the truth. Neighbors started noticing. She's different, Margaret. Quiet, cold. And I defended her like my life depended on it. She's just a teenager, I'd say. They all go through it, because admitting the truth, that my daughter was slipping away from me, was a wound I wasn't ready to bleed from. One evening, I tried to reclaim what we had. The roses were in bloom, the cicadas humming, the porch swaying gentle in the evening air. Come sit with me, I asked. A simple invitation to share the quiet. She rolled her eyes. I don't have time for this, Mama. And just like that, she walked inside, leaving me alone on the swing, the chain creaking under the weight of disappointment. That sound, that lonely, groaning chain echoed louder than any slammed door. I wanted to believe love was enough, that the little girl who once promised me gardens would always come back, but love cannot mend cracks that are splitting wider every day. Each silence, each snapped word was a fracture spreading across the life I had built. And I kept covering it with paint, pretending the wall was still whole, but cracks don't stay hidden forever. And the night would come sooner than I wanted, when the wall wouldn't just crack. It would collapse, and when it did, it would bury me beneath the weight of her betrayal. Betrayal doesn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a thief slipping into your home at night, taking not just your belongings, but pieces of your soul. For me, the first betrayal wasn't one moment. It was a slow bleed. By the time I realized what was happening, I was already emptying out. It began with whispers of loss. A few dollars gone from my purse. Loose change missing from the jar on top of the fridge. Maybe I miscounted, I told myself. Maybe I spent it and forgot. I clung to that lie the way a drowning woman clings to driftwood. But then the losses grew. 10s became 20s. 50s vanished as if the bills had grown wings. One afternoon, I opened the cookie tin where I kept my grocery savings. Empty. Every single dollar gone. I sat at the kitchen table, the tin cold and hollow in my trembling hands. I wanted to believe I'd hidden it somewhere else, that I was forgetful. That age was playing tricks on me. But mothers know. Deep down, I knew. The final blow came with my mother's jewelry box. It was small, wooden, lined with faded velvet. Not filled with wealth, but with memory. A silver locket from my wedding day. A bracelet my mother wore every Sunday when she baked. A pair of earrings she promised I'd wear once I was old enough. Gone. Every piece gone. I felt the air leave my lungs. My knees buckled. The room spun around me. I clutched the edge of the dresser just to stay standing. And then she walked in. My daughter. My pride. My blood. The thief wearing my face in her eyes. Where is it? I whispered, voice trembling. Where's my jewelry? She froze just for half a second, long enough for me to see guilt flash like lightning across her face. Then her expression hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about," she snapped. "Don't lie to me," I begged. "Those things, they're not just things. They're my life, my memories." Her lips curled into a smirk I didn't recognize. "You don't need them," she said coldly. "I do." Her words struck harder than any slap. She wasn't just stealing objects. She was stealing me, erasing me. I staggered back as if she had pushed me. Her voice wasn't my daughter's. It was someone else's, a stranger I had raised without knowing. That night, I sat in the dark with the empty jewelry box beside me. "She doesn't mean it," I whispered to myself. "She's just confused. She's young. Love will bring her back." But love didn't bring her back. It blinded me further, because once a child learns they can take without consequence, they don't stop. They take again and again. Her lies came so easily, as if she was born for them. "Where were you?" I asked. "With friends," she muttered, eyes never lifting from her phone. "Why didn't you come home last night?" I stayed at Sarah's, but her wrinkled clothes smelled of smoke. Her eyes carried shadows, and Sarah's house had nothing to do with it. One morning, I found a crumpled receipt in her jacket pocket. Liquor. She wasn't even old enough to buy it. She had used someone else's ID. When I confronted her, she laughed in my face. "You snoop too much, Mama. Mind your business. Mind my business." She was my business. She was my whole life. The shame didn't stay hidden within our four walls. It spilled into the streets of Huntsville. One afternoon, I carried groceries home when a neighbor stopped me. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes were sharp. "Margaret, I saw your girl down by the gas station." She wasn't with a good crowd. My cheeks burned hot. I forced a smile. I thanked her. I pretended I hadn't heard, but inside I crumbled, because in a small town, reputation is everything. And I had built mine on my daughter's goodness. Now that foundation was cracking, and everyone could see. The final straw came on a stormy night. Rain hammered the roof. Wind howled through the cracks. I sat in the kitchen, a candle flickering, waiting till hours passed. No call, no word, no sign of her. Then the front door slammed open. She stumbled in, soaked to the bone, her eyes wild, her breath reeking of alcohol. "Where were you?" I cried, rushing forward. "I waited. I cooked your favorite meal. I sat here all night." She shoved me back. "Don't touch me." My heart stopped. The same arms that once wrapped around my neck for comfort now pushed me away as if I were filth. "Why are you doing this?" I begged. What did I do to deserve this? Her eyes met mine, cold, unrecognizing. And she said words sharper than any knife. "Stop acting like you matter." I froze. Every bone in my body turned to glass. 70-9 years of life. Every dollar I had gone without. Every night I had stayed awake through sickness. Every prayer whispered into the dark. I thought it all mattered, but in her eyes, I was nothing. That was the first betrayal. Not just the theft, not just the lies, but the truth that she no longer saw me as her mother, only as an obstacle to erase. That night, I sat alone in the dark, her words echoing through me like thunder. "Stop acting like you matter, Dot." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. But what I didn't know was that this was only the beginning. The betrayal would not stop here. It would grow. It would spread. And it would leave me standing under streetlights with nothing in my hands but the silence of her abandonment. There is only so much a mother's heart can hold. Only so many nights you can cry into your pillow. Only so many mornings you can smile through shame, Dot, and then one day the heart breaks. Not with a crack you can patch, but with a shatter so sharp you bleed for the rest of your life. For me, that breaking point came on a night I will never forget, Dot. It was a Thursday. I had cooked her favorite meal, Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread still steaming from the oven. The house smelled like love, like comfort, like home. I set the table for two, my hands trembling with hope. Maybe tonight would be different. Maybe tonight she'd remember she was my daughter. The clock ticked. The food cooled. The chair across from me stayed emptied out by midnight. I sat staring at her untouched plate, fighting back the truth that had been screaming in my chest for months. I was no longer the center of her world. I was barely even part of it. Long after midnight, the front door slammed open. She stumbled in, clothes wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, the smell of smoke and strangers clinging to her. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice breaking. I waited. I cooked. I sat here all night. She cut me off with a sharp, cruel laugh. "You think I care about your stupid meals?" Her words pierced me like knives. But before I could even answer, she twisted the blade deeper. "You're nothing, Mama. Nothing but dead weight." Something inside me broke open. Not with sorrow this time, but with anger. "I gave you everything." I shouted, my voice shaking with years of swallowed pain. "My youth, my health, my money, my life. Every dollar I went without, every night I stayed awake, it was all for you." She rolled her eyes. "Then that's your mistake." Mistake. She called my love a mistake. I staggered back as tears blurred my vision. How did we get here? What did I do so wrong that you could hate me this much? She didn't answer. She just turned away, stormed into her room, and slammed the door so hard the walls rattled out. The next morning, the house felt different. Too still. Too light. I walked to the drawer where I kept my bank book. My savings. Every penny I had scraped together across 79 years of work, gone. Every last cent gone. I fell to my knees. My breath came in gasps. It wasn't just money. It was security. It was dignity. It was proof that my life had meant something more than sacrifice, and she had taken it without a second thought. That week, Huntsville shrank into a prison of whispers dotted the store. "Did you hear what Margaret's girl did?" Such a shame. After all Margaret gave her at the church. She's nothing but trouble now, and some words cut sharper than whispers. She must have raised her wrong. Maybe Margaret wasn't such a good mother after all. Every murmur was a blade. Because it wasn't enough that I was broken. They made me the reason I was bleeding. It happened on a rainy evening. Thunder rolled across the sky. Lightning cracked through the windows. And I sat in the living room waiting for her. When she finally came in, I couldn't stay silent. "You've taken everything from me," I said, my voice trembling but loud. "My money, my peace, my dignity. What more do you want? Do you want my life too?" She smirked, that cold, heartless smirk that didn't belong to the girl I once knew. "You don't get it, do you? You don't matter. Not to me. Not to anyone." Tears burned hot on my cheeks. "I am your mother. The one who carried you, fed you, fought for you. And this is how you repay me?" Her eyes narrowed. "You're just in my way. And I'm done pretending otherwise." She grabbed my arm. Her grip was rough, violent. For a moment, I saw nothing but the stranger she had become. "Get out," she hissed. "This isn't your home anymore." My knees buckled as she shoved me toward the door. The storm screamed outside. Rain lashed against the porch. I turned back, desperate, searching for even a flicker of the little girl I had raised. But all I saw was steel in her eyes. The door slammed. The lock clicked, and I was left standing in the rain, heartbroken, empty-handed. Alone. The rain soaked through my dress, down to my bones. My hair clung to my face. My hands shook as thunder rattled the earth. I stood there, an old woman cast out of her own home, trying to understand how love had twisted into cruelty. Neighbors' curtains twitched. I saw the faint glow of their eyes. but no one came out. No one opened their doors because betrayal makes you untouchable. And I was untouchable that night. That was the breaking point. The night my crown as mother was ripped from my head. The night my daughter turned from my blessing into my curse. And yet, as the storm soaked me to my bones, I didn't know the worst was still to come, because soon she wouldn't just push me out of my house. She would leave me standing on a cold road under streetlights with cars rushing past, and nothing in my hands but the silence of her betrayal. Betrayal doesn't end the night it happens. It lingers. It seeps into your mornings, into your meals, into your prayers. It becomes the ghost that sits at your table, sleeps in your bed, and whispers in your ear, "You are alone." After my daughter left me on that road, I thought the worst part was the moment itself, but I was wrong. The worst part was everything that came after. I don't remember how long I stood under that flickering streetlight. Minutes, hours. Time bent and broke around me. Eventually, my legs moved on their own. I walked through puddles that swallowed my shoes, past headlights that blinded me, each beam reminding me that strangers had more mercy than my own child. By the time I reached Maple Street, the roses by my gate had folded themselves shut in the night air. Raindrops clung to their petals like tears. I touched them just to feel something soft, something alive, something that didn't hurt me. Inside, silence hit me harder than any storm. No footsteps, no laughter, no voice calling, "Mama, I'm home." Her room was gutted. Closet doors swung open to reveal empty hangers. Drawers half pulled, left gaping like wounds. Even the photo of us on the church steps gone. She hadn't just left me on the road. She had erased herself from the house we built. I stood in her doorway for what felt like hours, clutching the frame, searching for even a scrap of her left behind, but there was nothing. The days that followed blurred together. I drew the curtains. I moved like a ghost through the house. I walked to the store only at odd hours, praying I wouldn't run into anyone. But in Huntsville, secrets don't stay buried. Whispers trailed me everywhere. "Did you hear? Margaret's daughter left her. They say she took all her money. Such a shame." After all Margaret gave her, some voices weren't whispers at all. Some said it boldly without flinching. She must have raised her wrong. Maybe Margaret wasn't as good a mother as we thought. Each word sliced, deeper than the betrayal itself. Because it wasn't enough that I was broken. They made me the reason for my own breaking. Relatives came too, but not with comfort. One cousin looked me in the eye and said, "You should have kept quiet. Family matters stay in the family." Another shook her head, whispering as if I wasn't standing right there, "You spoiled her. That's your fault." Fault, as if love was a crime. As if sacrifice was a sin. They hadn't seen the nights I stayed awake rocking her through fevers. The mornings I went without so she could eat. The years I scrubbed other people's floors so she could have new shoes. But none of that mattered now. In their eyes, her betrayal was my shame to carry. Loneliness settled over me like a second skin. It followed me into every room. It sat in the chair across from me at dinner. It slept beside me at night. I cooked meals no one came home to eat. I folded laundry that never left the basket. I sat in church pews alone, the empty space beside me screaming louder than the hymns. Even the porch swing changed. Where once it held laughter, it now groaned with emptiness. Each creak a reminder of the silence between us. Days lost their shape. Mornings bled into nights. I stopped answering the phone. I stopped opening the curtains. I stopped letting light in, because light only showed me how dark my life had become. Loneliness doesn't just haunt the mind. It carves itself into the body. My hands shook while I brewed coffee. My knees buckled on the stairs. My chest felt heavy with every breath. Neighbors whispered I was getting older. But it wasn't age. It was grief made flesh. Every heartbeat carried the echo of her voice. You don't matter, but here's the truth about loneliness. If you sit with it long enough, it begins to change shape. One evening, I sat on that same porch swing. The roses swayed in the breeze, their petals catching the last gold light of the sun dot, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel sorrow alone. I felt something sharper, hotter. Anger. Not at myself, not even at the whispers, but at the injustice of it all. I realized I had survived. Her betrayal hadn't killed me. It tried to erase me, but here I was breathing, still alive. If I could survive that night on the roadside, I could survive anything. The next morning, I brewed my coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and pulled out an old notebook. At first, the words came slow. My hand shook as it shaped each letter, but soon they poured out. I wrote about the night under the streetlight. I wrote about the empty jewelry box. I wrote about the whispers in town, the cruelty of family, the silence of my home. Every word was a stitch, sewing me back together. Every page was a bandage, covering wounds I thought would never heal. And I wasn't writing for her. I wasn't writing for them. I was writing for me, for the woman who had forgotten she was more than just mama. That night, as I closed the notebook, I whispered into the quiet air, I will not let her betrayal define me. I will not let my story end on that road. I will rise, and I will speak so no other mother ever feels this alone again. For the first time in years, I slept without nightmares. Not because the pain was gone, but because I had finally chosen to carry it differently. That was the fallout. The grief, the shame, the loneliness, but it was also the beginning of something new. The spark of strength, the promise of survival. Because betrayal may break your heart, but it cannot silence your voice. Justice doesn't always wear a judge's robe. It doesn't always arrive stamped and sealed, or echo from a wooden bench. Sometimes, justice is smaller, quieter. It begins as a whisper, the first time you dare to speak your truth out loud. For me, that whisper came on a Sunday morning. I hadn't been to church in months. The pews felt like strangers, like they belonged to another life, a life before betrayal. But that morning, I pulled on my best dress, pinned my silver hair back, and walked through those doors with my head high. Eyes followed me. Whispers drifted behind palms. Isn't that Margaret? Poor thing. Her daughter left her. Such a shame. I sat down anyway. Because shame only has power when it keeps you quiet. When the pastor asked if anyone had words to share, I stood. My knees trembled, but my voice held steady. My daughter betrayed me, I said. The sound moved through the sanctuary like wind through wheat. Gasps, a cough. A page turning that wouldn't stop. I lifted my chin. But betrayal will not silence me anymore. I am still here. I am still Margaret. And right then, I felt the weight I had carried for years begin to lift. Not flee, not vanish, just lift enough so I could breathe a fuller breath. After the service, I stood in the foyer with my hands wrapped around a paper cup, watching steam curl up and disappear. They came one by one at first. A young woman with a bruise fading yellow along her jawline. An older woman with hands that shook when she reached for mine. A teenager who didn't speak, that pressed a folded note into my palm and walked away. Me too, the note said. 2 words. Enough to crack open a whole world. By the time I left the church, I wasn't walking alone. I could feel the presence of others, women who had swallowed their pain for years. Women who had learned to smile with their teeth and not their eyes. We didn't say much that day. We didn't have to. Recognition is a language of its own. We met on a Tuesday evening in my living room. No speeches, no rules, Just chairs in a circle and a plate of store-bought cookies. They came as they were. A mother who hadn't heard from her son in 5 years. A nurse whose daughter stole her car and didn't look back. A woman who still kept her son's childhood baseball glove on the mantle because throwing it away felt like throwing away the child he used to be. We didn't fix each other. We witnessed each other. I thought I was the only one woman said, eyes glassy but steady. I squeezed her hand. No, neither of us ever were. We said a few simple promises, tell the truth. Let silence be a kind of prayer. Don't try to rescue what someone needs to release. By the second meeting, someone brought tea. By the third, I read a page from my notebook. Not all of it, just enough to remember what I had survived. Our circle grew slow and honest. We learned how to breathe together, how to sit with a story without turning away. Sometimes we cried. Sometimes we laughed at the strange, ordinary details, like how grief makes you forget where you left your keys, or how betrayal can make the grocery aisle feel like a minefield. Truth stitched us together where blood had failed. I didn't seek a courtroom. I sought a boundary. A counselor at the clinic helped me find my way through the maze. Names, dates, forms, statements. So many small boxes that wanted big answers. At first, the words on those pages felt cold, clinical, like they were trying to measure something immeasurable. But each signature I wrote laid a thin sheet of iron between me and her. Protection orders, safe contact protocols, restrictions she could not cross. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't vindication, but it was a door I could close without apologizing. I walked out into the sunlight holding a folder against my chest and felt, for the first time in a long time, that I could swing my porch door open without bracing for impact. I wish I could tell you that was the end. That paper dissolved memory and time sewed shut the wound, but shadows linger. They move different than bodies. Sometimes I still see her knees scraped, hair tangled from running, eyes lifted to me with a simple question, "Mama, watch me?" And I remember the other her, the woman who stood in our living room with a face I didn't recognize, whose mouth formed the sentence that split me open. You don't matter. Both shadows live in the same house now. I don't chase either away. I open a window. I let air move between them. Grief needs oxygen if it's going to change shape. I started keeping a ledger on the fridge. Not of money. That ledger was already emptied. This one held small justices, the kind that arrive without trumpets. Walked to church. Didn't sit in the back. Slept 6 hours without waking from that dream. Told Mrs. Harrell I couldn't bake for the fundraiser this year and didn't explain. Put the photo back on the mantle. Not because I forgot, but because I remember. Not victories. Not yet. But proofs that a life can keep moving forward with a limp. People asked when I would forgive her. As if forgiveness were a switch on a wall. I learned to answer carefully. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is not inviting the knife back to the table. It's the slow, stubborn refusal to let the wound be the only story I tell. Some days I could hold that truth. Some days I set it down and picked it up again tomorrow. On the hardest days, I wrote a single sentence in my notebook. I am not what she called me. And then I read it out loud until my voice sounded like it belonged to me again. When I was young, I thought legacy meant a house deed and a good name. That you proved your worth by what your children carried on. Now I know better. Legacy isn't what you leave for your children. It's what you leave in the world. Mine will not be betrayal. It will be truth. Every time I speak, another bar in the cage bends. Every person who hears me becomes a witness who cannot unhear. In the circle, we started a little ritual. At the end of each meeting, we said out loud something we reclaimed. My laugh, my music, my porch, my name. When it was my turn, I said, my voice, and then I said my name all the way through. I am Margaret Thompson. It felt like unlocking a door from the inside. I began receiving letters. Some slipped into my mailbox with no return address. Some left beneath my doormat with trembling handwriting. A few arrived from towns I'd never visited. They started the same way. I heard what you said. Then they unspooled losses, sons who cut ties, daughters who took and kept taking, families who weaponized silence, towns that traded compassion for gossip. I made tea. I sat at the kitchen table. I answered everyone I could. Not with solutions. With presence. Your story matters. You are not alone. This is not the end of your name. The letters piled into a stack, and then a box, and then a shelf by the window. When the afternoon sun hits just right, the envelopes glow like small lanterns. Healing, I learned, doesn't sound like angels singing. It sounds like ordinary life returning. The squeak of the porch swing, and not flinching at the empty space beside me. The kettle's whistle and pouring a second cup just because I want one. The phone ringing and deciding I don't have to answer. Opening the curtains and realizing the light was never the enemy. It was the mirror. I still cry sometimes. Not because I am broken, but because I am soft where the world tried to harden me. Soft as not weak. Soft as a choice. If you are listening now, if something in this story sat down beside you, hear me. You are not alone. Your pain may be heavy. Your silence may feel endless. But your voice, even if it shakes, even if it whispers, even if it only speaks once, is enough, because the moment you speak, you are free. Not from all of it. Not forever. But free enough to take the next breath that belongs to you. My name is Margaret Thompson. I am 79 years old. I live in Huntsville, Alabama. I am a mother who gave everything. A woman who was betrayed, but also a survivor who found her voice again. This is my story. This is my justice. And now it is my legacy. This was my truth. This was my justice. If my story reached you today, don't let it end here. Subscribe to Granny's Justice so more voices like mine can be heard. Leave a comment below. Tell me where you're listening from, because every voice matters, and every story deserves a witness. Like this video if you believe truth should never stay hidden. And share it, because silence ends faster when stories are passed on. Pause. A faint sigh. Not of weakness, but of release. I am Margaret Thompson, and this was my justice.